If I were to start woodworking all over again and could use the experiences that I've had so far, there are some decisions that I would make and some things that I would do differently. And not because I failed as a woodworker or because I bought bad tools, but because I thought about woodworking as a set of tools rather than a set of systems. I made choices that worked at the time, but didn't make sense in the long run. Things like how tall my table saw was, whether or not I could put it next to an outfeed table, what I used for dust collection, what I learned about dust collection, and many, many other topics. So if you're looking to build a shop that you're going to spend the next few years in, this video might save you some money, might save you some time, might save you some hassle, and will probably help your health in the long run. So I hope you'll stick with me. For example, table saw height. I started out with a contractor-based table saw that I bought from Home Depot. It was a good saw, but what I didn't know at the time that I know now is that saws are typically engineered to be different heights. So when you start with a contractor saw like I did, they're taller by about 4 or 5 inches than a professional cabinet saw. Cabinet saws are built lower to align with an outfeed table that you might use as a work surface. So for the first handful of years in my shop, my outfeed table was really tall and I couldn't really build things on top of it. I needed everything to get down lower, not just because I'm not a super tall guy, but because when you're woodworking, it's better to be woodworking at about waist level. Contractor saws and job site saws are built for repetitive ripping of boards and cuts you would make on a job site. In that case, you want to be standing up straight, so those saws are made a little taller. When you're breaking down sheet goods, for example, on a table saw, up here is very hard and very awkward, not to mention that you don't have an outfeed table to catch what's coming off the saw, and it tends to be hazardous and sketchy looking, and you wouldn't want your friends watching you do it. So over the years, I learned that cabinet table saws are built lower to the ground and far heavier than contractor saws, so they don't move. You need that when you're in the shop working. There's 2 things in your shop that really should never move: your table saw and your workbench. So a few minutes ago, I mentioned dust collection. I'm going to step to the side here. Here's the big green monster that I started with, and I guess it's great if you're just looking to keep your shop sort of clean maybe and pick up some big chips. But anyway, I wouldn't recommend this. I would totally not use that at all. I actually went with the Harvey G700 dust collector, not because I'm sponsored by Harvey. I'm not sponsored by anyone. You'll see a lot of Harvey tools in my shop because I think they make very high quality tools, and I'm very pleased with the tools that I do have. But what I liked about the Harvey is that it's a 3-stage dust collector that gets close to HEPA standards and grabbing that 0.1 micron dust particle. It's not perfect. It does still leave a mess from time to time, but there are no perfect solutions. If you get into woodworking, dust is a reality you're going to have to deal with. The Harvey G700 was my go-to for dust collection, but I didn't start there. I started with the big green monster from Harbor Freight, and then I bought a handful of those wall-mounted rockler units. I'll put one right over here for you. Those wall-mounted rockler units that basically are good for, they say they're good for 3 or 4 or 5 tools at a 4-inch dust port, but in reality, I only ever got decent performance with just one tool. So anyway, I spent all that money on all these dust collectors. My shop was always a mess. It was covered in dust everywhere. And it wasn't until I finally made the buy once, cry once kind of decision to buy a nice higher end dust collector that things actually changed in my shop. And if you're new to woodworking, the third thing I would highly recommend is a high quality random orbit sander with its own dust collection. Again, getting back to the health aspects of dust and sawdust and what's in today's plywood and what's in today's hardwoods. You don't want any of that stuff in your lungs, and it'll just get all over your shop if you don't get aggressive with dust collection. So I use a Festool random orbit sander. I'll put the model number up on the screen. And I use the CT26 dust collector. Now this is actually HEPA rated, so I can sand with this thing for hours on end and have minimal dust on anything in the shop. Now a lot of people will say, oh, Festool's too much money, it's not worth it. In this case, it's totally worth it. I had probably 8 random orbit sanders that made my arms numb, my fingers numb, my hands numb. My entire family who helped me with woodworking complained that this sander is making my hand fall asleep, because we started with the little Black & Decker mouse, and then we got the Rigids from Home Depot's and the blue ones from Lowe's, all those brands that were just horrible. But we didn't know they were horrible at the time. We just thought that's what everybody used. When we got the Festool sander, it was like an aha moment. So I could make this video crazy long, and I could go into super deep details about everything that we talked about today. But I think you get what I'm trying to say. And that is that what I've learned over the years of buying way too many woodworking tools and setting up my shop and moving everything around and trying to find the optimal layout is that if I could do it over again, would I do it differently? Absolutely, I would do it differently. I would aim for not more expensive tools necessarily, but do your homework. If you're setting up a shop in a garage and you're going to have that shop for years, consider going straight to a professional grade cabinet table saw. I won't say they're expensive or not expensive, because whatever is expensive or not expensive is different for you than it is for me. But having a good quality cabinet table saw is probably your very first woodworking purchase. You're going to build almost everything else in your shop around your table saw. And if you're like me and you buy that big, tall, rigid 4510 from Home Depot and then have a step ladder in front of it so you can use it, you won't be able to build anything else to work with that. Here's the real crux of what I've learned over the years, is that I bought woodworking tools thinking about them as tools, but they're not tools, they're systems. And they work together in concert and in orchestration to make woodworking projects smarter, easier, and more manageable. So to recap, starting with a good quality cabinet table saw, starting with a good quality dust collector to go with it, and starting with a good quality random orbit sander. You don't have to buy Festool, Mirka. There's several other brands out there that make high quality tools, but you need to do your homework. If I could do it all over again, if I started with those three things, I think I'd be a whole lot happier. So, hope you found this information helpful. Hope you stuck with me this far, and if you did, I really appreciate you. Not very many people do. So, that's it for me, friends. Till next time, peace, love, and sawdust. I'm out.